What is going on, everyone? Tutorial Tim here, and today we're going to go ahead and add component properties to tabs, and this one will have some interesting insight in regards to how we go about adding component properties to all these elements. So currently the way we have these individual items, menu items, uh, compartmentalized is that we offer a different variant with an icon and then text by itself in the same scenario with this icon stacked. And then we have this inline icon. So what I mean by this is we could actually just have one version of this. It's really up to you. Uh, and the pros of this are essentially what we'd be doing is with this icon, you are setting a Boolean property to just show the icon and setting it to true by default so that whenever a designer's leveraging this, they could have the fixed tab variant without the icon by just toggling this off, so long as those specs are the exact same. And we can adjust that as needed. So all we'd have to do is ensure that that's set to a fixed height and width and that the content is centered at all times, and you're good to go. Um, and at the end of the day, as a design system maintainer, you're better off with this approach, and that is one of the advantages with the introduction of component properties is that it allows you to maintain less things, so long as you leverage the component properties correctly, which is really nice. So we could go ahead and do that, or if you still wanted to, you could just keep these properties. I mean, you could keep these fixed tabs as well. You would just have to uh, just if you don't keep them and remove them, which is something we'll do just to kind of keep this system more lightweight. And I'm going to go ahead and just label that fixed tabs and then delete this. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete these elements, but also take into consideration, since in the previous section of the course we've built these out, some of these um, instances will no longer have a main component that they'll be attached to directly, but you'll be able to restore that component, which I'll show you. So we'll have to go in and replace some of these components. But for now, instead of having this text only variant, we'll essentially just update the taxonomy of this as well and ensure that it says, let's see here, let me go back to ensure that the height of this component is good to go. So with that, cut that. Okay. Alrighty, I'm just trying to fix this to make sure the height's good to go here. Um, Looks like I could adjust some of these properties. Okay, I see. So I just fixed the issue with the height on this tab. So now we're good to go. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and delete these two elements and go ahead and push these up here and just kind of readjust this and fix the naming convention of these. Really, we're just getting rid of this entire classification here, the way we categorize that, the leading icon and text. Since it'll offer both the icon and text now with the component property, we can literally just call this the fixed tab variation. And we can go ahead and apply the same logic here. So if I go up here, I can just grab these elements. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is just just fix the naming convention of this. And I'm just deleting these elements. Oops, okay. And now, since these are all main components, I'm going to go ahead and combine them as variants. And then specify that as type of tab, and then these are the states for the tab. And then I can go ahead and adjust the spacing of these component properties. And then I'm going to add a text property to apply to all these components. Just call that label, create property. And I'm going to go ahead and Command Shift click on the 3 remaining labels. And now with that, we can go ahead and type in a label, and we should be good to go in that regard. And also, we do have the show icon text or Boolean property already made, so I could just, for example, Command Shift click into these icons, hit Shift return, select the appropriate layer, and then I can apply that Boolean property of show icon. So now whenever, say I have all 4 of these selected, I could hide those as needed. So the one thing we'll need to take into consideration is ensuring that the height's set to fixed, which it currently isn't on some of these components. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure those are set to fixed. And then we can also ensure that all the auto layout alignment properties are set to align center. So that way when an element is hidden, it is good to go. So one thing to note is that this icon only variation doesn't actually need to have the show icon text property. My mistake. So I'm going to unlink that. And what we're actually going to do is have a hide label text property. So I'm going to go ahead and create that property, call it hide label, set that to false. Whoops, I'm going to set that to true. So I'm going to recreate that. Or I could just call it show label since it's on by default. Then I can go ahead and just apply that property as well to the next one. So we have the appropriate logic for each of the tab variants. So now I can hide that label as needed. But one thing we're going to need to do is figure out how to get this to center when that label is hidden. One thing that is new since the recording of this course, now that Figma has the stroke update, one thing that is considered out of date in terms of a practice is the way in which the stroke has been created. You notice we have this rectangle here that is 2 pixels tall, leveraging this color. Figma actually now offers the ability to apply strokes to specific sides of the container, so of this frame or layer. So what we can go ahead and do now is refactor this. So what I ended up doing to achieve this was I had a frame wrapped around my text, which you could probably just get rid of if you wanted to, but I've kept it there for the sake of how it was constructed before, but we could even refactor that. So in order to do that, as an example, I could go in and just say detach this, or actually maintain that. Go ahead and just set this property to fill and the height to hug, and then also want that, this frame's gonna completely remove it, and then set this text to fill container once again, since it readjusts the properties. And just to stress test to ensure that this is working correctly, I'm going to reset all the changes so that it's now up to date with this component and its updates. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the label, and the content stays centered, which is exactly what we want. And the issue I was having, which is why I paused the video, is because I was trying to maintain this structure here where there was actually 2 pixels being recognized within the parent container, which was actually offsetting this element being centered when I was toggling the label on and off. And I was just trying to do some hacky stuff with auto layout to achieve the appropriate effect. But we actually don't even have to do that. What we can actually do is, one thing I'm going to do is select this element, copy its properties, and then I'm going to paste them on this instance, but it's going to be its own component now. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is drag this out, drag this one in, so it has the appropriate naming conventions right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and just apply the appropriate styles to the text and the icon. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is, now that I'm going to set a stroke now, as opposed to using that rectangle within the parent container. So I'm going to have the stroke set as 2 pixels, or 2 dips in the world of material design. And I'm going to go ahead and set that just to bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and identify the appropriate color and grab primary, and there we go. We're ready to rock and roll. So now if I go ahead and swap this out for the active state with the, might have to fix that to the stacked variation now that I think of it. Some good, this is good triaging. So with that, we can start to test once we've applied the properties again. So I have this text here, apply that labeled text property, and then I'm going to apply the show icon property. And now I'm going to test what happens. Oh, I need to hide the label, excuse me, sorry about that. Let's go here. I'm going to unlink the show icon property, as that doesn't need to be there. And going to apply show label. And then from there, I'm going to test show label. And now it's centered. So now we have the effect that we want. And yeah, we're ready to go. So with that, the last thing we need to do is, when we select our variants, you'll see that we have conflicting variants, and we do because these are 2 different variations that need to be specified. And there's this inline variation of the tab, and then there's a stacked version. And we just need to create a property. There's 2 ways of doing that. I like to do it by just like adding a new field here within the layer by renaming it. So essentially what you're doing is you're adding another component property manually by typing it out. So states, as you can see, appears right here, and then the value for it, that being the active state, appears right here. So you can kind of see what it is that we're going to be inputting. So, but we're going to do it one by one. So every one of these elements will have to have these values in order for there to be conflicting properties in this variant. So I'm going to go ahead and I could like give it a name of maybe layout inline, and then I'm just going to copy that. And then I'm going to go to the next one, paste that. That's also inline. And then I'm going to rename that, and then I'm just going to call that stacked. So that's then going to rename that, call that stack. So now when I select my tabs, you'll know that there's a new whatchamacallit, there's a new property that's been added. And to be honest, I think, the more I'm looking at these tabs is if I rename this to tabs elements, so that designers understand that these are the elements they can use to construct these higher level tabs, I could actually just go in and delete this right here. Or I could, maybe allude to these being like fixed tabs. If I really wanted to be very specific and we had other variations of tabs. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is delete this property, and then I'm just going to rename layout to type. So I have the different types. I have the inline variation and then the stacked. And we've already applied all the component properties, so now there is no more conflicting variants, and we can go ahead and publish these changes and add a description, which I highly recommend getting in the habit of doing. But for the sake of this exercise, I won't. And I'm going to challenge you to refactor these components. You'll note, or refactor these variations and componentize them with the proper naming convention. So like here, we have tabs, and then it's the scrollable icon only version. And I want you to go in and just practice using these component properties that we created to achieve the visual effect that you need, and just make sure everything's responsive, and we'll be good to go. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, so now that you hopefully finished the challenge of creating these variants with the new elements that we've updated with component properties, I'm going to go ahead and build this out so that it is also accessible via variants, and I'm going to show you how powerful these component properties are now that we've taken the time to essentially refactor and eliminate the extra elements, those elements being the previous menu items, and how we consolidated those with component properties. And here I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of how I went about quickly building these out. So here we have roughly 5 items, and just keep in mind that material design has specs to where the minimum width at all times for excuse me, for all of these elements is a min width of 90 dips. So I can go ahead with those selected, modify the width, and also ensuring that the content is clipped, and there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and just replicate that, and you'll notice that I'm doing it with the icon version, which is no different in terms of how I'm constructing this. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and select all these, wrap them in an auto layout, and then once that's done, I can go ahead and hit my command left key to change the width. I could just change that to 360 right away, ensure that the content is clipped, and I can go ahead and add an active state. And the nice thing about this is this could literally be, 360. This can literally be a text-only variation by just simply clicking show icon on all those elements that are selected and ensuring that it has a minimum width of 90 dips on each of these elements here. And yeah, rock and roll. So that's how I built those, and then I just made sure they had the proper naming conventions for now. And I did the same as well here, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the remaining 3. I'm going to go ahead and change the type to stacked, so the next variations all include a stacked version. And I'm going to go ahead and just hide the label since this is an icon only version. And with that said, making sure that there's a min width of 90 here. So I'm going to select all these and just type in 90. Make sure this is working appropriately. Okay, awesome. Sorry, just want you to see the shortcut keys. Okay, awesome, there we go. And with that, now that these are all selected, I can ensure that the spacing between these items is next to each other, so set that to 0, and then I'm going to hit Shift A to add auto layout, and then use my shortcut keys to reduce the width here. And then the nice thing about this is I'm going to set the height to fill container for these elements, and it will fix them to where they are set to a height of 48, which is what we'd like. And I can go ahead and just like double click into one of these and change the state to active to achieve that visual effect and ensure that the content is clipped. And that is how you go about building this scrollable icon only variation. I'm going to copy those naming conventions and paste them here and then turn that into a component. Prior to doing that, actually, I'm going to make sure I duplicate that and then turn that there and then just swap those real quick. And now with the with this variation, I can go ahead and hit enter, and I will have all my items selected. I can click show item, and it's as easy as that in terms of duplicating this. Now that that's there, we are good to go. You can add more items as you like, as you see fit. Since this is a scrollable variation, the content is clipped, so you can see that extra one is there. I'm gonna go ahead and swap these real quick and delete that, and then scrollable tab stacked icons. I could name it that, or if you have better naming convention that's more concise, do what you wish. And then we can go ahead and also go replicate this variation over here where we have 3 menu items that have precise widths that amount up to a total width of the parent container, which is 360 dips. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just go down here and select these other items, detach this, delete those, and then hit that. I'm going to set these to fill container, and it will automatically, it's intelligent to where it'll recognize, you know, the width of the parent container and distribute the spacing evenly amongst each of the elements, which is really nice. Thank you, Figma. And yeah, I am going to go ahead and make that a component and go ahead and get that naming convention, paste that here. Since this is a fixed variation, just grab that labeling and then use some shortcut keys to speed that up. And boom, there we go. Yeah, that is all you need there. And then one of the last steps is just fixing this naming convention prior to making it a variant, because that will create conflicting properties. So notice that there's 2 levels, and when I mean 2 levels, these 2 slashes indicate different levels in terms of navigating and finding these tabs in Figma. So if I go ahead and click combine as variants, you'll see that we have invalid variants, and that's because we have this one where it thinks there's 2 properties because of the slash naming convention that we had. So I just need to go in and, well, this fixed one we want, let's see here, let's find the commonality amongst all of these tabs. So we have this property 1, property 1, property 1. They're all the same. They indicate type. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is rename property 1. I can show you how to do that real quick. So go property 1, change that to type. Really fun. I enjoyed that. There we go. And now I just need to fix this one and ensure that I remove this name. And we can continue to adjust the naming convention of all these elements as we go. Let's see here. Okay. And so we have the different types where one is, we have this fixed version, has So I'm going to fix that naming convention there. So we have this fixed version. We have the scrollable. Let's see. So we're testing this. We have the scrollable icon only. We have the scrollable with the tabs, and scrollable with the icon stacked completely, and with the inline icon as well. And also there is another pro tip where I could actually go into this component and start to uproot the nested instances. So I go here, whoops, I need to click properties and then select nested instances. So we can see what this has to offer currently. So if I go here now, I can see that I have the ability to modify all of these individual tab elements, which is kind of crazy. You have all this flexibility here. Yeah, and with that said, it's really a matter of balancing out, how dense you want your component properties to be or not. So just being mindful of that as you're constructing this stuff is really important. And you can see I'm going ahead and just quickly manipulating all of these and accessing that all within the right panel. It's super helpful. So like as an example, I can go to this variation of the component now, and I can now see all of those nested instances. It's insane. It's super awesome. So that is all I have to show you for these tabs, and I really hope you found this video helpful. Thanks so much. Please share with your friends, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.